everyone, Carolyn here. My passion, if you don't know already, is children and working with children and their families to get them the best resources, the best information possible in order for children to really reach their optimal potential. And so I'm going to be doing a little video right now on what you can ask yourself if you noticed any of the red flags that I described or the clinical cues that I described in my last video. So just as a little summary, we talked about some of the red flags could be things like they don't notice when other people are in the room, they're not playing appropriately with kids their age, they're not responding to people's emotions, they're not referencing parents or other trusted adults, they're engaging in unusual repetitive behavior. So all of these are red flags, and you can go back and watch my other video to have a look at the longer list that I described. But I really wanted to get into how you can kind of do informal screening at home before you go to see a general practitioner or your family doctor or your pediatrician if you're already seeing one, because these are this is good information for you to have ready when you go see your doctor, so that when they ask you these questions, you have the information. Oftentimes, people will go into doctor's appointments and be asked questions, things like, when did your child say their first word? Or when did your child coo for the first time? And a lot of parents and just people in general don't know that information, not because they're not great parents, but just because, they tend to forget, or they're not really noticing certain things that doctors may really ask about. Things like, do you notice that they make eye contact? Those kinds of questions. So I'm going to give you a list of questions right now, and hopefully you find these helpful for if you feel like you need to kind of informally screen your child because you noticed maybe some or many of the red flags that I described in the previous video. So some questions that you may find useful to ask is, does my child not speak as well as his or her peers? Does my child have poor eye contact? Does my child not respond selectively to their name? Does my child act as if they're in their own world? So this may even appear as if they're zoning out. Does my child seem to tune others out? Does my child not have a social smile that can be elicited reciprocally? So what this means is, if you're walking past somebody and you wave and give a smile, the other person would reciprocate that and wave back or smile back, especially with kids. I mean, mind you, this is given that there's no stranger danger, but, if I'm at my sister's house and I'm playing with her son, he knows me as his auntie. If I'm smiling at him and playing with him, he will smile back. That reciprocity, that back and forth between the two of us. Another question is, does my child seem unable to tell me what they want? So a lot of children, and this is really common with children with autism spectrum disorder, is instead of verbalizing or communicating to you, I want milk, or it might even just be milk if they're not at a multi-word phrase phase. But a lot of children, if they are maybe suspected of having autism, they will take you by the hand and physically lead you to whatever it is, the place or the thing it is that they want, rather than telling you, even if they're capable of telling you. This may be part of their delay in speech, but it's also quite a common symptom of kids with autism. Does my child have difficulty following simple commands? So we're talking about 1 to 2 step instructions, Jimmy, go get your shoes and then put them on, or go to the bathroom and throw this in the garbage, or brush your hair. Like any of these 1 to 2 step simple commands, are they able to comprehend and follow them? Does my child not bring things to me just to show them to me? So if you were tuned into my last video, you would have heard that one of the red flags is not referencing, and I think maybe I brought it up in the introduction of this video, but children will often reference an adult to get feedback for something. So if they see an airplane, they might point to the airplane, look at their parent or aunt, uncle, grandfather, grandmother, whoever it is, and look for some sort of feedback. So the parent might respond and say, yeah, that's right, that's an airplane. Wow, look how high it's flying in the sky, and try and kind of engage in some form of conversation or, interaction with that object. So another part of that is a child may bring something to you just to show it to you. So their favorite toy, or something that they found, um, a game that they're playing on their tablet, or whatever the case. Often kids just want to share in that with you. So another red flag, which we talked about in the last video, is also not sharing in somebody's joy. So that could definitely be a sign that something is a bit amiss. So likewise, another question is, does my child not point to interesting objects to direct my attention to those objects or events of interest? Like the airplane example that I just described. Does my child have unusually long and severe temper tantrums? So temper tantrums, of course, are normal. Every child has them, and arguably some adults as well. Totally normal, but if they're really, really long and they're inconsolable, and it's very beyond the degree at the event that is upsetting them. So what I mean by that is, often kids who are a bit delayed in their emotional intelligence, and this isn't specific to autism, but it could be a sign of high anxiety, it could be a sign of mild or moderate intellectual disabilities. Basically, something happens and the event is here, but their reaction is up here. So they're not reacting appropriately based on the event. So that, again, can be a sign. Another question, does my child have repetitive, odd, or stereotypic behaviors? So I talked about that briefly in the last video. Does my child show an unusual attachment to inanimate objects, especially hard ones? So like a chain, a teddy bear, a blanket. Again, some of these are normal, some of them not so much. So you need to really use your discretion when you're dealing with some of these things, because it may be specific to your child and you know best as the parent. Does my child prefer to play alone? Does my child demonstrate an inability to play with toys in a typical way? So what that means is, let's say your child has a toy car, and instead of, driving it all around and saying beep beep, or pretending to crash, or, jumping off a bridge, they're just kind of bringing it close to their face and rolling it back and forth, or they're lining them up based on, size with other toys, other cars, or they're grouping them in certain colors. Those kinds of things could be a sign. And then last but not least on my list is, does my child not engage in pretend play? And this is usually given that they're about 2 years old and older. And pretend play, again, I described briefly in the last video, is just imaginative play. I just wanted to explain that the questions that I just described or stated to you are reproduced from the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's a report. So, again, this is not the end-all be-all of questions that you may ask, but these are good questions in case you're feeling like something might be wrong, that if you go to a doctor to get your child assessed, that healthcare professional may very well ask you very similar questions, and it would be great to be prepared and have actual information to bring to them of observations that you have consciously made of your child. So yeah, please look forward to the milestone video, which I will be posting soon, and I hope you found this helpful. Thanks. Bye. See you next time.